Christmas 2009. That was the day I received my first ever game console, the Wii. I fell in love with various games for that system, including Toy Story Mania, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, Super Mario Galaxy 2, and many, many more. I believe there were two games, however, that truly captured the Wii system's core magic and essence. These were none other than Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort. These two games were simple to understand for all. You would use the Wii Remote to play sports, almost exactly as they would be played in real life. On top of that, these games also heavily utilized Miis, avatars that you could design as caricatures of yourself, friends, family, or just about anyone you could imagine. Not only would you play as them, but they would populate the game's world as well, appearing in background stadiums, watching you play the various sports. As silly as it may sound, this made the game feel real in a way, boosting the immersion that already came with motion controls. Because of this combined charm of the Miis and the simple pick-up-and-play style, I adored these games growing up. For years, I always longed for a new entry, a worthy successor to the magic of Wii Sports Resort. In 2014, Nintendo released Wii Sports Club for the Wii U system. While that game introduced HD graphics, online play, and some new gamepad gimmicks, everything else was exactly the same as the original Wii Sports game from 2006. Thus, my dream of a proper sequel to Resort was left unfulfilled. That was until February 9th, 2022. I was tuning into the latest Nintendo Direct presentation with my sister, awaiting reveals of upcoming games for the Nintendo Switch system. This was when Nintendo dropped what I personally consider one of the biggest bombshells of the Switch era so far.
What?
No! Nintendo Switch Sports.
What?
Please take a look.
What? No.
Here are the sports included
Why aren't you using Miis?
sports game.
Oh gosh.
You might
Oh, gosh.
recognize these three from past Wii
Oh
Sports
no.
games.
Oh no.
For making a Wii Sports successor without Miis? Later in that presentation, they did confirm Miis would still be playable, but only as an option. This time they would play second fiddle to new avatars, known as Sportsmates. I was very upset.
Oh, please, it's not that hard.
You make a Wii Sports sequel, and you remove the Miis! What is wrong with you, Nintendo? Taking the focus away from the Miis felt like half of the charm of the original two games was being removed. Nevertheless, the rest of the game looked promising, and I vowed to reserve full judgment until the game's release, when I could give it a fair shot. With the game having recently released on April 29th, 2022, the time has finally come for me to break my silence, and share with you all exactly how I feel about this game. First, let's talk about the gameplay. Nintendo Switch Sports currently has 6 sports included in the game. This is a step up from the original Wii Sports, which featured 5 sports, but a step down from Wii Sports Resort, which included 12. While this may seem disappointing, I'm more interested in the quality of the sports available rather than the quantity. The returning sports available in this game are tennis, which was featured in the original Wii Sports game and Wii Sports Club, bowling, which has been featured in every Wii Sports game to date so far, and Chambara, a variation of swordplay from Wii Sports Resort. Tennis in Nintendo Switch Sports feels almost identical to what I remember the original Wii Sports and Wii Sports Club versions feeling like. But I wouldn't have it any other way. Wii Sports Tennis is a masterclass in simple yet addictive game design. It uses simple motion and nothing more, but captures the feeling of tennis better than any sports simulator on the market. Simply put, I adore this sport. Bowling in Nintendo Switch Sports is another sport that is pretty much identical to its counterparts from the preceding games. Yet, it still feels as fun as ever. Some of the extra modes like 100-pin bowling are gone, but they have a challenge mode that randomly generates different lane types and obstacles to overcome. Honestly, I find this more fun, and it adds a lot of replay value to the bowling in this game. There is also a new online exclusive mode called Survival Bowling, which is essentially a Battle Royale-esque elimination mode. It's really hard to say in the game, but it's super fun and inventive. Honestly, among all the new features included in this game, this may be among my favorites. When they first revealed Chambara was being included in Nintendo Switch Sports, I questioned why they didn't just call it Swordplay as they had done in Wii Sports Resort. However, after playing for myself, I understand why. Swordplay in Wii Sports Resort was a collective term for free activities, including Duel, Speed Slice, and my favorite mode of the whole game, Showdown. Chambara in this game, however, is only the Duel mode. Speed Slice and Showdown are nowhere to be found. I don't really miss Speed Slice, but Showdown not being here is such a massive letdown. I can't begin to describe how much fun I had storming through the paths of Woohoo Island and eliminating hordes of Miis. It was wacky single-player fun at its best. Duel was the main staple of Swordplay, however, being the most directly multiplayer-focused of the bunch, so I'm very glad it's here. From what I can tell, the core gameplay is near identical, but the mechanics have been slightly altered to be more strategy-oriented. Swings are now more confined to specific motions, making it easier to pull off specific moves when you want to use them. Guarding with your sword is also more emphasized, with a blue light glowing around your weapon to let your opponent know that you're guarding. Overall, I'd say these mechanical changes are an improvement over Wii Sports Resort. It's less chaotic, but it's much more rewarding and fun to play now. There are also different weapon types to choose from in Swordplay, with dual and charged swords being added. Charged swords build up energy when you block hits from your opponent, allowing you to pull off a powerful blow once your gauge is full. Dual swords have you hold 2 Joy-Cons, and effectively just fight with 2 swords at once. While I like the idea of multiple sword types, I find it slightly unbalanced. I think I'd prefer if they made it to where each player has to use the same weapon type. Nevertheless, I adore this mode, and I play it online regularly. The free sports brand new to this game include badminton, volleyball, and soccer. Soccer is one of the few sports in this game to have multiple play modes. The main attraction here is of course the regular soccer matches, where 2 teams of 4 compete. I have a strong distaste for this mode for one core reason. It goes against the design ethos of the Wii Sports franchise. The Wii Sports games were designed with a philosophy that anyone could pick up and play, due to all the games relying on motion controls that correlated with the real-life sport. Soccer, on the other hand, plays like a very standard video game. You run around with a thumbstick, and increase your speed with the ZL button. To kick the ball, you shake the Joy-Con in your hand. This in no way resembles a motion you would make during a real-life soccer match. It's too complicated for someone who doesn't play games at all to understand, and it doesn't feel at all like the real sport. The second soccer mode, however, is a different story. Shootout mode utilizes the leg strap from Ring Fit Adventure. You essentially use your leg to kick the ball into the goal as it flies by you. You have to get your timing just right to make it in. A simple concept with simple-to-learn motion gameplay. Despite this, however, it just isn't as deep as the returning sports, and you can't even play it online as far as I've seen. One of my major concerns leading up to the release of Switch Sports was that badminton would feel too similar to tennis. Boy was I right. Badminton is just tennis, but with 2 players instead of 4, and slightly faster paced. It isn't technically bad, but it's very disappointing to see what's essentially a clone of a far superior sport taking up space on the roster. I was initially worried volleyball would also feel way too close to tennis, being another net-based sport. However, it actually plays quite differently. You have to pull off the specific motions of volleyball just right in order to win. It's quite challenging and difficult compared to the other sports in the game, but it feels right at home here. However, because of its learning curve, I just don't see myself coming back to it often. I should also note that there will be more sports added to this game at a later date. Nintendo has confirmed golf, which was featured in every prior Wii Sports game, will be added this fall. Data miners have also uncovered evidence that basketball from Wii Sports Resort may return, as well as a new sport, dodgeball. Quite frankly, I'm disappointed they didn't put in the effort to have these extra sports at launch when the past two games had everything right out of the gate. The original Wii Sports games, while mostly being multiplayer focused, still had great single-player progression. In Nintendo Switch Sports, however, the only way to make any sort of progression, i.e. unlocking new outfits and accessories for your avatar, is by playing online multiplayer matches. While this is fairly standard for a lot of modern games, and does technically work well here, I feel that there should be a sense of progression for the offline modes as well. This also feels strange when you take into account that the Switch is a portable device that can't always be connected to the internet. But oh well, who needs progression when you can just enjoy yourself playing Wii Sports Tennis and bowling in tabletop mode with your friends? Nintendo, you never cease to amaze me. Next, let's talk about the design and atmosphere of the game. Resort set a gold standard for design and atmosphere, with all the sports taking place on Woohoo Island, one central location where all the sports venues were connected, and with rich lore and scenery, much of which you could even explore through the island flyover sport. Nintendo Switch Sports follows up on the idea of Woohoo Island with Spoko Square, which is essentially a state-of-the-art sports complex, with buildings dedicated to each sport, and other venues such as restaurants and stores throughout the area. While Spoko Square never reaches the same remarkable highs as Woohoo Island, it's a pretty well-designed location that adds to the environment of all the sports. But what about the characters that inhabit it? The Sportsmates are terrible. They could have been fine if they were just as, or even more customizable than the Miis, but they're not. The Sportsmates can only have one of 6 preset face templates, meaning everyone looks exactly the same. Compare this to the Miis, which emphasize facial customization, making everyone look unique. Thankfully, Miis are still playable in all their glory. However, note the keyword playable. All the NPCs in this game are guaranteed to be Sportsmates, whether they're the ones you play against, or the ones you see populating the background. There's no option to change this, so if you prefer Miis, you're stuck feeling like an outsider. But hey, it could have been worse. Apparently, the development team almost gave us anime teenagers and food robots. What happened during the production of this game? Well, according to a recently released Ask the Developer interview with the team behind the game, a lot. Apparently, when the team was first asked to create a new Wii Sports game shortly after the Switch's launch, they felt there was nothing left to do and that they had tried everything with the first 2 games. So they tried a bunch of new stuff to freshen it up, including making complex sports that didn't rely on motion control at all, and creating wacky new characters completely unlike the Miis. But, understandably, it wasn't working out. Yoshikazu Yamashita, the director of the game, stated,
"We had lost our way and were on the verge of losing the charm of Wii Sports. And by the time we acknowledged we had pursued the wrong direction, years had already passed."
This statement alone explains exactly what went wrong with this game. The developers fundamentally misunderstood what made the first 2 games so great, and this game clearly suffered because of it. Ultimately, however, I'd say Nintendo Switch Sports is a good game. I've had a great time with at least half of the sports, but for a multitude of reasons, including the middling new sports, the lack of real single-player progression, and the atrocities that are the Sportsmates, I just can't help but prefer the classics.